40inbox.com here, and we're going to be checking out this TikTok where it's basically tipping is getting out of hand by Austin Show. All right, so let's check this out.
I tip at least 20%, but I think tipping is getting out of hand. I was on a ride yesterday, and in the middle of the ride, I get a alert from the Lyft service that says, "Hey Austin, enjoying your ride?"
Wait, that's pretty crazy. So basically, he's getting like a reminder to tip the driver while he's still riding in the car with the driver, like on this trip. You're literally being reminded to tip when it hasn't even been done yet.
Show your driver you appreciate them by giving them a tip. In the middle of the ride.
It's like a threat at that point.
Yeah, it's like,
See, like I would agree that's a little egregious because you're not there yet.
yeah.
So did you just stall or did you tip
No, I
him?
didn't tip until the end of the ride.
No, he took a screenshot. He took a screenshot of it and sent it to the group chat and was complaining.
I tipped.
Now, here's the thing. Personally, I'm not too familiar with Uber or Lyft about the whole tipping situation there. Because I've just never used Uber, never used Lyft, never had to, so I don't really understand the tipping situation on there. If you stumble upon this, feel free to put your input. But tipping is kind of getting crazy because like just in like normal stores on their like POS system, they're basically trying to just get you to click on like a 15-20% tip for basically random stuff or like random stores. It's starting to make almost no sense. Now, I just think it's kind of crazy to be reminded to tip when you're not even done or didn't get the full delivery of a service or product yet, right? Like, it's basically like saying, like, imagine you were sitting down in a restaurant and you were eating your dinner. And while you're eating your dinner, while you're eating it, the waitress basically goes and like, hey, don't forget to tip me. It's like, what? Like, you'd be like so put off by that, you'd be like, what is going on? So this person says, don't understand why not just raise prices the 20% and give that to waiters would save the hassle. The thing is, like, again, for like this whole tipping situation, I don't think there's anything wrong with tipping per se, but it's like you shouldn't be reminded during whatever it is. So yeah, that's insane in the middle of the ride. I tip 20% every time I order food, and they still steal my food or drinks. I love Austin, okay. I never tip unless they're really good. That one seems kind of like crazy to me. Tipping is BS. It's just a legal loophole for businesses to not have to pay their employees living wages. Which, funny enough, I pulled up the Department of Labor like information about tipping, so we're gonna check that out soon. They get whatever their performance earns them. The thing is, there's some individuals who are like tip waged employees that could bring in like $500 to even $1,000 in a single night, depending on what they're doing and depending on their service. If you tip nothing, maybe they would not expect you to tip anything. I'm not about to do percentages, so I just always give them a $20 tip, and that's the tip, okay? Hello first. They asked if I was going to tip for Botox, like, excuse me, that's pretty insane. I don't mind the reminder to tip. Some people don't. Tipping is reality in the US, especially. If you don't accept that, don't use the service. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So, like, let's check this, right? So, from the Department of Labor.gov, right? A tipped employee engages in an occupation in which he or she customarily and regularly receives more than $30 per month in tips. An employer of a tipped employee is only required to pay $2.13 per hour in direct wages if that amount combined with the tips received at least equals the federal minimum wage. So if the employee's tips combined with the employer's direct wages of at least $2.13 per hour do not equal the federal minimum hourly wage, the employer must make up the difference. Many states, however, require higher direct wage amounts for tipped employees. So that's kind of interesting. So minimum hourly cash wages for tipped employees under minimum wage laws in the states. Interesting. So basically, it's pretty much like these businesses are basically trying to save on them having to pay out of pocket to meet the federal minimum wage, basically. Which I find pretty interesting because I was not aware of that. I was not aware that they would basically have to match up to the minimum wage if it wasn't actually that case. Like if they weren't actually able to like meet it. Minimum wage laws in the states. Table of minimum wage by state, historical table. States with higher minimum wage than federal. Interesting. Oh wow, Texas is $7.25 per hour. Woo! Let's see. Ooh, Georgia $5 an hour. North Carolina $7 basically. Washington $15.74 an hour. Interesting, they're higher than California. That's kind of funny. Colorado 13. Okay. New York 1420. It looks like New York might be the highest. Very interesting. Interesting. Minimum hourly cash wages for tipped employees. So minimum wages for tipped employees. Okay, so table of minimum hourly wages for tipped employees by state. Now that's interesting. So Alaska is like $10.85. Okay. So I guess it has to meet up with the state's minimum wage. Okay. Maximum tip credit against minimum wage $5.12. Basic combined cash and tip minimum wage rate. Interesting. So state requires employers to pay tipped employees a minimum cash wage above the minimum cash wage required under the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, which is $2.13. So no matter what, they have to be paid higher than the $2.13, but not necessarily by much. Interesting. Like this is kind of like a weird situation because it's like a tipped a tipped employee is like kind of like facing like a double-edged sword, right? It's either they risk making very low amounts of money or they could potentially make really good money because maybe they just get tipped so much that they're no longer limit. Like basically the interesting thing about this is like they're not capped by how much money they could potentially bring in with tips other than compared to like a salaried employee or like a hourly pay employee where like let's say that you were to get paid like an hourly wage of like only $15 an hour, right? Well, by being a tip employee, you'd probably end up potentially making less than that, but you also have the possibility of making way more than that compared to someone who's just getting paid the $15 an hour. So it's kind of like an interesting thing because it's like, I guess it kind of like depends on what do you expect that you could potentially make in tips, or do you think that you have a good enough personality or that you could provide a good enough service to get good amount of tips, right? Because I mean, I've seen like news articles where people were able to bring in like $500 a day in just tips, which is pretty insane. But obviously, not everyone can do that. Like in those cases, it tended to be like young, very attractive females that were able to bring in those types of tips. I think it'd be probably a lot harder for a guy to bring in that type of tip income per day. So I don't know. Maybe if you don't got good people skills, maybe focus more so on like either like a commission job or try to work a job that pays you better on like a per hour basis and just grind it out. But if you are very good with interacting with people, maybe a tip job could actually make you way more money than like a minimum wage job. But I don't know. This seems kind of crazy to me. It's very interesting. Feel free to give your thoughts. But overall, I think tipping's kind of getting out of hand because basically everywhere they're trying to make you tip, like literally everywhere.